Magandang araw! EA Santos po ulit. Welcome back sa ating PTABCP Business Coaching YouTube channel. I-invite po kita na mag-subscribe dito sa PTABCP Business Coaching YouTube channel. Nag-create ako ng isang page dito sa aking website na kapag ka-clinic mo, ito yung home, no? Kunyari, napunta ka dyan. Napunta ka po sa aking website. I-click mo itong book e-consultation. Book e-consultation, yes. Para makapag-book ka ng appointment or e-consultation sa EA Santos sa akin yun, ano? Yun. Para maiwasan natin yung hindi ka nasasagot. At least nag-alat na ako ng time. Usually in the morning, yung consultation. Meron tayong duration. Pwede ka mamili ng 1 hour or 2 hour dito sa drop-down. At yung booking registration, mamimili ka sa drop-down kung ano yung gusto mong i-consultation duration, no? Mamili ka dyan, yung mga may white, yan yung may mga available na time. At say, halimbawa, 9:30 yung napili mo, i-indicate mo yung email address mo dito, tapos yung full name mo, yung full name ng magpapakonsulta, yung cellphone number ng magpapakonsulta, at saka yung topic na i-consult. Pwedeng maraming topic mo. Tapos dito yung booking overview. So, ito yung venue mo, i-consultation, yung pinili mong duration, 1 hour. Ako yung consultant, ako si Elgin. Then, yung ating consultation fee is 1,000. Tapos, yung date and time, ito yung pinili mong slot na consultation. Then, i-click mo yan. Tapos, submit. Nilalabas yan na submit successful. Yan po. And then, we will reply sa'yo kapag nasunod mo na yung mga ibang steps, no? First step, yung mapili ka ng slot, then yung mag-fill up ka ng personal information, then pay the advisory and consultancy fee. May ibabatang email sa'yo, nandun po yung information ng GCash and BDO. And then, i-email mo po yung proof of payment. Dito po sa consult@easantospa.com. At least 2 days. At least 2 days po. Ito po ay first pay, first served basis. Ay, ma'am, sorry. Kung sakaling hindi naman ganun kahaba yung iyong itatanong, kasi mahaba yan naman itong 1 hour duration. Kung hindi ganun kahaba, pa isa-isa lang yung iyong tanong, mag-join ka dito sa Taxpayer Health Group sa FB. Mag-post ka ng question mo dyan. Kung pa isa-isa lang, 2 o yung 3 yung tanong mo. Yan, mag-post ka ng question dyan sa FB page na Taxpayer Health Group. I-approve po namin yan kung legit yung ibig sabihin pang related sa tax o PTABCP topic in question. I-approve po namin yan. Merong sasagot sa inyo dyan na members din ng Taxpayer Health Group.
Ang discussion ko para sa vlog na ito ay bago ako mag-start. Bago ako talaga mag-start, ini-invite po kita or ini-encourage kita na mag-enroll sa aming seminars and workshop. Nagkaroon na po ng iba't ibang variant ang aming bookkeeping guide in actual practice. Ito po yung real life setting na bookkeeping. Meron po kaming PTABCP B32, non-VAT or percentage tax registered seller of services taxpayer or entity. Meron ding PTABCP B33, non-VAT or percentage tax registered seller of goods, taxpayer or entity. Meron din pong PTABCP B42, VAT registered seller of services, taxpayer or entity. Meron ding B43, VAT registered seller of goods, taxpayer or entity. Alright, so itutuloy na natin ang ating vlog. Let's listen! Welcome back sa ating Just Listen episode. Itutuloy na nating basahin ang RR number V-1. Natapos tayo last time sa section 15, so ang ipagpapatuloy natin ay section 16. Section 16, freight stub receipts and passage tickets required of common carriers. Common carriers, transportation contractors, and other persons subject to tax under Section 192 of the National Internal Revenue Code shall use freight stub receipts and passage tickets in duplicate to be printed in accordance with such form as the Public Service Commission may, from time to time, prescribe. In issuing the freight stub receipt, the carrier or his agent shall enter in both the original and the duplicate the name and address of the carrier, the date of issue, the names and addresses of the shipper and the consignee, a description of the goods shipped with a statement of their weight or quantity, the place of delivery to the carrier, and the destination of the goods, the route to be followed, the date of shipment, and the amount of freightage. Every receipt issued must be signed by the carrier or his authorized agent. Passage tickets shall also be in duplicate and must show the points of embarkation and destination and the amount of charges. The original must be delivered to the passenger or the shipper, and the duplicate retained by the carrier for record purposes and preserved for a period of 5 years from the date of issue. However, passage tickets may not be issued in duplicate if common carriers employ the services of inspectors or car auditors, etc., to check and supervise the issuance of the passage tickets by their conductors, and if they keep in their office daily record of the number of tickets issued to every conductor as well as the number of tickets returned by each conductor after each trip or day's work. Section 17. Admission tickets and other records to be issued are kept by persons subject to amusement tax. In the case of amusement or business places where fees or cover charges are required to be paid for admission, the proprietor, lessee or operator shall evidence payment of fees or cover charges. The tickets shall be serially numbered and shall indicate the name of the place of amusement or business and the fees or cover charges. The serial number of each ticket and the admission fee or cover charges shall be printed on the ticket twice, such that when the ticket is divided into two upon being presented for admission, both the serial number and the price shall appear on both parts. Before the proprietor, lessee or operator of the place of amusement or business orders tickets for printing, he shall first send to the collector of internal revenue, if the business is located in Manila, or to the provincial revenue agent or deputy provincial or city treasurer if in the province, a written notice stating the name and address of the printer with whom he intends to place the order, the classes of tickets, the inclusive serial numbers, the admission fee or cover charge, and the total number of each class of tickets. The proprietor, lessee or operator shall keep for record purposes the invoice or receipt issued by the printer covering the order. Before being used, the tickets shall first be presented to the collector of internal revenue. If the place of amusement or business is located in Manila, or to the provincial revenue agent or deputy provincial or city treasurer, if in the province, for approval and registration. The said officers shall keep a register of tickets in the form of a ledger, such that each place of amusement or business shall have a separate account or record for the purpose of entering therein all the tickets presented for approval and registration, indicating the date of registration, the classes of tickets, and the admission prices, the inclusive serial numbers, and the number of tickets of each class. The proprietor, lessee, or operator of the place of amusement or business shall likewise keep a true and correct record of his stock of tickets, indicating the total number of registered and unregistered tickets, and of the registered tickets, how much has been sold from day to day. All such proprietors, lessees, or operators shall prepare monthly statements of the daily box receipts from admission fees or cover charges, showing the total number of each particular class of tickets sold, the unit price of each class, and the total amount collected, duly signed by the proprietor, lessee, or operator, or by his manager. The said statements shall be submitted to the Collector of Internal Revenue if the place of amusement or business is in Manila, or to the Deputy Provincial or City Treasurer if in the province, not later than the 10th day of each month as regards the gross receipts for the preceding month. Duplicate copies of the said statements shall be kept by the proprietor or operator at the box office as part of his accounting system, and the same shall be preserved in the same manner as the books of accounts and other records. Other persons subject to tax under Section 260 of the National Internal Revenue Code shall keep true and correct records of the gross receipts. In case any of the records and registers in before mentioned are not appropriate for their business, they shall devise a system for recording the receipts appropriate for their business and submit the same before they are used to the Collector of Internal Revenue if the place of business or amusement is in Manila, or to the Provincial Revenue Agent or City or Deputy Provincial Treasurer if in the province for registration and approval. Chapter 5. General Administrative Provisions. All such corporations, companies, partnerships, or persons shall keep the books or records mentioned in Section 334 hereof in a native language, English or Spanish, provided, however, that if in addition to the said books or records, the taxpayer keeps other books or records in a language other than a native language, English or Spanish, he shall make a true and complete translation of all the entries in such other books or records into a native language, English or Spanish, and the said translation must be made by the bookkeeper of such taxpayer or, in his absence, by his manager, and must be certified to under oath as to its correctness by the said bookkeeper or manager, and shall form an integral part of the books of accounts aforesaid. Section 336 Commonwealth Act Number 466 as amended by Section 12 Republic Act Number 48. All the books of accounts, including the subsidiary books and other accounting records of such corporations, companies, partnerships, or persons shall be preserved by them for a period of at least 5 years from the date of the last entry in each book, and shall be subject to examination and inspection at any time by internal revenue officers, provided that all corporations, companies, partnerships, or persons who retire from business shall within 10 days from the date of such retirement, or within such a period of time as may be allowed by the Collector of Internal Revenue in special cases, submit their books of accounts, including the subsidiary books and other accounting records, to the Collector of Internal Revenue or any of his deputies for examination, after which they shall be returned. Section 337 Commonwealth Act Number 466. Section 18. Language to be used in keeping books of accounts and supporting papers, translation of entries in other books and records. The books and records prescribed in Section 334 of the National Internal Revenue Code shall be kept in a native language, English or Spanish. The vouchers and other supporting papers and documents, being part of the accounting system, shall likewise be kept in a native language, English or Spanish. However, persons who keep other books, in addition to the books and records prescribed in Section 334 of the Tax Code, in a language other than a native language, English or Spanish, shall, within 10 days from the date of the transaction, make a true and complete translation thereof into a native language, English or Spanish, the said translation to form an integral part of such books, registers, and records. The translation shall be made in a neat and legible manner, in ink or indelible pencil, either on the same page of the books, registers, or records, opposite or below each entry, or on a separate page opposite the page to be translated. The taxpayer or his bookkeeper or manager shall certify to the correctness of the translation of the entries in the book, register, or record by executing, within 10 days, after each book has been filled or its use completed, a certificate to be sworn to before a notary public or an internal revenue officer authorized to administer oaths. The certificate shall be placed immediately following the translation of the last entry on the last page of each book and shall be substantially in the following form. Certificate of Correctness. I hereby certify that the foregoing translation is a true and complete translation of all the entries contained in this blank, covering the period blank to blank 1904 blank, owner, bookkeeper, or manager. Subscribed and sworn to before me at blank, Philippines on this blank day of blank 1904 blank. Internal Revenue Agent or Notary Public. Section 19. Prior approval and registration of books of accounts, registers, records, invoices, and receipts. Persons required to keep books of accounts, internal revenue books, records of receipts and disbursements, additional registers and other records, invoices and receipts for recording their transactions as prescribed in these regulations shall, before using any of the aforesaid books, records, registers, invoices, or receipts, first present them to the Collector of Internal Revenue if the place of business is in Manila, or to the Provincial Revenue Agent, or to the Deputy Provincial or City Treasurer if in the province, for approval and registration. A register book for every book, register, or record which has been approved shall be kept showing such information as the date of approval, the name and address of the taxpayer, his citizenship, the number of the alien registration certificate or landing certificate if an alien, the kind of business and the schedule, paragraph, and number of the privilege tax receipt issued for the business if any, and the kind, volume, number of pages or sheets of the book, register, or record approved. Every book, register, or record so approved and registered shall be serially numbered for each taxpayer. Likewise, all approved invoices and receipts shall be recorded in a register showing such data as the date of approval, the name, address, and the kind of business of the taxpayer, the schedule, paragraph, and number of his privilege tax receipt, and the number of booklets or pads and the inclusive serial numbers of the invoices or receipts thus approved. Before ordering invoices or receipts for printing, a taxpayer shall send to the Collector of Internal Revenue if his place of business is in Manila, or to the provincial agent or city or deputy provincial treasurer if in the province, a written notice of the name and address of the printer with whom he intends to place the order, and the total number and inclusive serial numbers of the invoices or receipts ordered. Before any book, register, or record is presented for registration, there shall be placed on the front cover by the owner thereof an identification as to the kind of book, register, or record, the name and business address of the owner, citizenship, the number of the alien registration certificate or landing certificate, if an alien, the kind of business engaged in, and the schedule, paragraph, and number of the privilege tax receipt issued for the business, if any. The pages of the book, register, or record must be serially numbered in a permanent and legible manner. If a book, register, or record is approved, the following authentication shall be made by the approving officer on the reverse side of the front cover thereof. This blank, volume number blank, with blank pages or sheets, is approved on this blank day of blank, 1904 blank, for purposes of Revenue Regulations number blank. Signature, designation of officer. If the book, register, or record presented for approval is a continuation of previous books, registers, or records, besides the foregoing authentication, the following notation shall be added to the authentication. Volume number of this blank was approved on the blank day of blank 1904 blank. Signature, designation of officer. In the case of invoices and receipts, the approval shall be indicated by an appropriate stamp placed on the front cover and on the back page of the last invoice or receipt of the booklet or pad approved, together with the signature of the officer authorized to approve the same. Section 20. Inspection of books, registers, and records. All books, registers, and other records and vouchers and other records and vouchers and other supporting papers required by these regulations shall be kept at all times at the place of business of the taxpayer, subject to the inspection of any internal revenue officer, and upon demand, the same must be immediately produced and submitted for inspection. When required by inspecting officers, the owner, bookkeeper, or manager shall give the necessary explanations regarding the items in the entries contained in the said books, registers, and records. In the case of a branch store, or where the controlling books are kept in a place other than the business establishment, there shall be kept in the store or business establishment such books and records as would clearly reflect all the transactions effected therein. When the books, register, record, and other papers are needed by an internal revenue officer for examination outside of the taxpayer's place of business, the said officer shall issue a receipt therefor on the required internal revenue form. After making the inspection or examination of the said books, registers, records, and papers, the internal revenue officer shall make a certificate or notation on the inner side of either cover of the book examined, stating thereon the extent of his examination and his findings. Section 21. Preservation of books of accounts and other records. All the books, registers, records, vouchers, and other supporting papers and documents prescribed in these regulations, and other records kept by taxpayers at their option, shall be preserved intact, unaltered, and unmutilated for at least 5 years from the date of the last entry in each book or from the date of the last transaction, and the same shall be kept at all times in the place of business of the taxpayer, who shall produce them for examination or deliver the same or any of them for inspection outside of his place of business upon demand of any internal revenue officer. Section 22. Submission of books and records upon retirement. All taxpayers required by these regulations to keep books of accounts or other records who retire from business or cease to pursue their calling shall, within 10 days from the date of such retirement, or within such period of time as may be allowed by the Collector of Internal Revenue in special cases, upon application therefore in writing, submit their books of accounts and other records pertaining to their business, including the translations thereof, to the city treasurer or the deputy provincial treasurer for examination. The city treasurer or the deputy provincial treasurer shall keep all such books and records in a secure place, and notify the corresponding provincial revenue agent of the receipt thereof within 48 hours after the receipt of such books and other records. An examination of such books of accounts and records shall be conducted immediately by an internal revenue officer to ascertain if all the taxes due from the taxpayer have been paid. Section 23. Return of books and records. The books of accounts and other records mentioned in the preceding section shall not be returned until after the taxes, charges, and penalties found to be due, if any, shall have been paid, unless authority to do so shall have been first secured from the Collector of Internal Revenue. Furthermore, in case of violation of any provision of the Internal Revenue laws or regulations has been committed by a taxpayer and said books of accounts and records constitute the evidence of such violation, they shall not be returned until after the case shall have been finally settled. After the books of accounts and records have served the purpose for which they were taken or submitted, the Collector of Internal Revenue shall notify the taxpayer or his representative to get the books and other records. If the books and other records are not taken by the taxpayer or by his representative, the same shall be destroyed by the Collector of Internal Revenue within 6 months from the date of said notice. Books held by internal revenue officers for examination in the provinces shall be destroyed by the provincial revenue agents only upon previous authority of the Collector of Internal Revenue. Chapter 6. General Penal Provisions. A person who violates any provision of this code or any regulation of the Department of Finance made in conformity with the same, for which delinquency no specific penalty is provided by law, shall be punished by a fine of not more than 300 pesos or by imprisonment for not more than 6 months or both. Section 352, Commonwealth Act No. 466. Any person who knowingly shall make a false entry or enter a false or fictitious name in the books or records mentioned in Section 334 and 335 of this Code, or who shall abet or aid in any manner in the making of writing thereof, shall be fined in a sum of not less than 500 pesos, nor more than 5,000 pesos, or imprisoned for a term of not less than 6 months and 1 day, nor more than 5 years, or both. Any person who fails to keep the books or records mentioned in Section 334 in a native language English or Spanish, or to make a true and complete translation as required in Section 336 of this code, or whose books or records kept in a native language, English or Spanish, are found to be at material variance with books or records kept by him in another language, shall be fined in a sum of not less than 2,000 pesos, nor more than 10,000 pesos, or imprisoned for a term of not less than 2 years, nor more than 6 years, or both. Nor more than 6 years, or both. Section 355, Commonwealth Act No. 466 as amended by Section 13, Republic Act No. 48. Section 24. Penalty for making false entries or writing false or fictitious names in books or records. Any person who knowingly makes any false entry or writes any false or fictitious name in his books of accounts or other records, or who abets or aids in the making or writing thereof, is punishable under Section 355 of the National Internal Revenue Code by a fine of not less than 500 pesos, nor more than 5,000 pesos, or by imprisonment of not less than 6 months and 1 day, nor more than 5 years, or both. In order to obviate the possibility of entering false or fictitious names in their books, taxpayers should require persons with whom they have transactions which should be entered in their books to exhibit their residence certificates, if subject thereto, and take note of their number and the date and place of issue. A person who fails to keep the book or records mentioned in Section 334 of the National Internal Revenue Code in a native language, English or Spanish, or to make a true and complete translation of books kept in other languages into a native language, English or Spanish, or whose books or records kept in a native language, English or Spanish, are at material variance with books or records kept by him in another language, is liable to a fine of not less than 2,000 pesos, nor more than 10,000 pesos, or imprisonment for not less than 2 nor more than 6 years, or both. Section 25. Penalty for violation of other provisions of these regulations. Any person who shall violate any provision of these regulations, for which violation the National Internal Revenue Code or any other law does not provide any specific penalty, shall be penalized under Section 352 of the aforesaid code by a fine of not more than 300 pesos or by imprisonment of not more than 6 months, or both. Section 26. Repealing provisions. Regulations numbers 34, 48, 58, 84, 91, 101, 105, and 108 of the Department of Finance and other regulations inconsistent herewith are hereby repealed. Section 27. Date of effectivity. These regulations shall take effect upon their promulgation in the official gazette. Miguel Cuaderno Sr., Secretary of Finance. Recommended by Bibiano L. Mier, Collector of Internal Revenue. Appendix 1, Sales Book. Form A, column date, column name and address of customer, column invoice, column cash sales, column credit sales, column general merchandise C-14, column general merchandise C-13, column exempt B-5, B-9. The total of the amounts under columns cash sales and credit sales represent the volume of business, while the remaining columns are intended to show the classification of the sales in accordance with the privileged tax receipt of the business and the rate of the percentage tax due on each particular line of business. The illustration form should be used in a store where original sales are made, 𝗕14, locally purchased articles are sold, 𝗕13, and tobacco products as well as vino are retailed. It will be noted that sales of vino and tobacco products are grouped together even if they are treated by law as two different lines of business, for the reason that they are not subject to any percentage tax and that the fixed tax therefore are that graduated, unlike the business of selling locally purchased articles. The other columns are self-explanatory. Date for the date of transaction, name and address of customer for the customer in cases of credit, in cases of credit sale, or in transaction of 50 pesos or more each, and invoice for the number of invoice issued for the transaction. Appendix 2, Cash Receipts Book. Form A-1. Column date, column name and address of customer, invoice number, total received, advances, balance. Persons who are subject to pay the percentage tax on gross receipts may not keep the sales book but the receipt book as illustrated. Upon receipt of the contract, the transaction is entered in contract received book, and at the end of the day, the advances received are posted to the cash receipts book, posting separately the transactions involving 50 pesos or more each, under the column advances. All the other payments received during the day shall be posted under the column balance. The total of the columns advances and balance represent the taxable business of the concern. Appendix 3, Purchase and Expense Book, Form B. Column date, column name and address of vendor or lessor, quantity and description of merchandise, column invoice number, column cash, column credit, column C-14, column purchases, column C-13, column exempted, column expenses. Appendix 4, Guest Register Book, Form C. Column entry number, column arrival date, column arrival time, column name and address of guest, column room number, column departure date, column departure time, column amount paid. Alright. Mapapansin mo, no, yung page 15 napunta sa page 19. Kaya kanina, nasa page 14 tayo, tumalon tayo ng page 19. Dahil nung ibinigay sa akin tong copy ng RR-V-1, the-request ko to sa BIR office mismo. Tapos pinadala nila to sa akin. Etong soft copy nito, ganito yung pagkaka-scan. Yung page 15 napunta sa page 19. Ganon po siya. Again, i-mention ko na meron kaming compilation sa PTABCP Business Coaching YouTube channel at 𝗕𝗢𝗨𝗏𝗏𝐶PA.com. Meron kaming compilation of bookkeeping and books of accounts, regulations, and issuances. Ito pong compilation na ito ay ibinibigay namin ng libre sa mga VOD enrollees, yung video on demand enrollees ng Bookkeeping Guide in Actual Practice. Yung iba't ibang klase ng variant. Kung ano po yung pinili mong ma-enrollan, basta VOD course na Bookkeeping Guide in Actual Practice or BKG series, ikaw po ay bibigyan namin ng hard copy ng compilation of bookkeeping and books of accounts, regulations, and issuances. Kasama po itong RR-V-1 doon sa compilation na ito. And now, this ends the reading for the RR-V-1. Kung meron po kayong gustong kung meron po kayong mga issuances na gusto ninyong basahin namin at i-post dito sa PTABCP Business Coaching YouTube channel, paki-comment na lang po ninyo sa ilalim ng video na ito ang mga issuances, rulings, or laws na gusto nyong mabasa namin para sa Just Listen episodes. Maraming salamat po sa inyong pakikinig. Yung mga seminars namin in the past, may mga seminars kami na pinamimigay na namin ng libre. That is via
via YouTube. Wala nga lang tong mga certificates. Kapag may certificate, hindi dyan ang punta. Doon sa Let's Learn Online. Nasaan ang Let's Learn Online? Ito. Preview. Ayan. Kapag nasa loob ka ng Let's Learn Online, ganito ang iyong virtual schoolroom, classroom. Yan. Pero, yan. O, ganito ang Let's Learn Online. Nandito nakahouse ang mga video on demand. Yan. Yung mga may kailangan ng certificates, yun, you have to enroll dito. Pero kung hindi mo naman kailangan ng certificates, dito ka na lang. Nasa free, merong mga free seminars and workshops. Itong mga to. Lalo na yung Accounting 101. Ito, nilagay na po namin dito. Yun.
Invite po kita, no? Meron kaming webinars, pero video on demand, through video on demand courses. Nagkaroon na kami ng iba't ibang variant ng bookkeeping guide in actual practice or real life setting courses. Ito yung PTABCP BIR 32 para sa mga non-VAT or percentage tax yung registration niya. Registered Seller of Services Taxpayer or entity. Yung B33, non-VAT or percentage tax registered seller of goods or entity. Then, yung B42, VAT registered seller of services taxpayer or entity. And then, itong B43, registered seller of goods taxpayer or entity. Ayan po ang aming iba't ibang BKG or B-series na VOD courses. Ito po ang laman ng mga courses na ito. Ayan. Meron kang matatanggap na dalawang materials para doon sa iyong BKG VOD course. Meron yung lecture at saka yung practice set or yung workbook. Ang dinidiscuss sa materials, yung mga gentle reminders natin, mga regulations sa bookkeeping and books of accounts. Ayan. Then, yung dinidiscuss dito, yung mga accounting methods. Ayan. Ang bookkeeping hindi basta-basta kasi depende yan sa accounting method na ginagamit mo. Merong accrual, di ba, at saka cash basis. Pero meron ding sinasabi ang tax code tungkol sa accounting method na gagamitin. Ganon din yung 𝗕𝗔𝗕 ruling, nagpalabas ang 𝗕𝗔𝗕 ruling about sa accounting method. No? Tapos yung conform sa basic framework, dinidiscuss natin yan. And then, yung mga tax jurisdictions or tax regimes na pinagdadaanan ng mga business transaction. E dinidiscuss natin yan. Tapos, yung documentation to support your entries in your books of accounts. Kasi si BIR, no, napaka-importante sa kanya ng documentation. Kapag ka makikipag-transact ka, ensure that you have source documents. Yung valid, legit, yung relevant, admissible, yung ganyan. And material sa transaction. So, ito yan. Dinidiscuss natin yung mga yan. And then, dinidiscuss din natin paano tayo mag-i-strategize ng bookkeeping. Wag yung basta magbo-bookkeeping ka lang, ma'am o sir, kasi madadali tayo sa LOA. Kailangan kapag nabigyan ka ng LOA, isa ka sa pinalad na nabigyan ng letter of authority, ibig sabihin, sinasubject ka sa investigation, tax audit investigation, no? Ang nangyayari sa LOA, yung mga dokumento mo na lang ang kausap ng BIR examiner. Wala ka doon o yung staff mo para magpaliwanag. Kaya ang gagawin mo, dapat pag magbo-bookkeeping ka, alam mo na mag-i-stand up ang iyong mga records, documents, and books. So, paano natin gagawin yon? Dito natin pinag-uusapan sa Part 5, yung strategizing your bookkeeping. Yan. And then, ito yung ating lecture. Pagdating naman sa practice set, ano yung ating ginagawa? Ito, no? Meron tayong review ng books of accounts at kung paano tayo magbo-bookkeeping. Tapos, i-identify natin. Ano ba? Anong tawag dito? I-ID natin si taxpayer o ikaw bilang business owner. Ano yung mga tinitingnan sa'yo ng BIR examiner as a business owner? Ano ka? Knowing the subject taxpayer. No? So, dapat na mo yan. Nalalaman mo rin kung ano ba yung paano ka kinikilatis ng BIR examiner yon. And then ito, importante, yung bookkeeping setup mo. Ano ba yung chart of accounts mo? Ano yung uses and purposes ng iyong mga libro? Ayan, ikaw yung dapat nagsasabi kung ano yan. Of course, dapat aligned ka sa tax code, ano? Tapos yung mga pro forma bookkeeping entries. Etong pinaka-importante, yung mga bookkeeping entries mo sa iba't ibang transaction. Capital contribution, sales-related transaction, sa collection, yan, pagka may CWT o kaya walang CWT, yung mga payment mo ng mga VAT purchases, tsaka disbursements, kapag ka bumili ka, ano ang transaction, pag nagbayad ka, ano yung transaction? Siyempre, minsan bumibili ka rin sa hindi VAT o kaya sa hindi non-VAT. Diba? Yung mga ganon. Paano yung pag-e-entry sa mga transactions with them? Tapos, nagpapasweldo ka. Yan. Ano yung entry para sa mga payroll? And ayun, sa mga SSS PhilHealth Pag-ibig, ano yung entry? Pag nagpa-file ka ng return, may entries yung mga yan. No? Tsaka pag nagbabayad ka, may entries ang mga yes. Yes. Bakit napapa-yes ako? Karamihan kasi ng mga nagiging client ko, hindi naglalagay ng entry para sa accrual and payment ng kanilang tax dues. Iba-iba pa naman yung mga tax dues nyo or tax types, no? Merong withholding tax sa compensation, EWT, VAT, income tax. Hindi naglalagay ng entry. Ah, aminin daw. Ayan, tapos yung movement ng inyong capital. Pag nag-withdraw ka, ano yung mga entry, ayan. Yung part 4, ito yung ating ibu-bookkeeping. Ano to ha, mga totoong kliyente, yung totoong entity, kliyente. Ano yan, mga totoong entity yung ating sample dito. So, kung paano sila bookkeeping, paano yung ginawa sa kanila, tinuturo po natin dito yon. And then, pinaka-workshop talaga. Gagawa ka ikaw kunyari si bookkeeper, ikaw yung gagawa ng mga entries. Tinuturuan ko rin kayo dito ng automation sa MS Excel. Kaya meron tayong mga pivot table. I-automate mo yung ginawa mo sa iyong Excel para mas mabilis makapag-come up ng trial balance at saka financial statement. Yun kasi yung mahirap eh. Kaya hirap na hirap yung at the end of the year, hirap na hirap ang mga bookkeeper and accountants. Lalo na kapag naka-MS Excel ang mga clients o ang mga yung mga taxpayers. Nahihirapan sila sa pagbuo ng general ledger. Kasi sa general ledger, dapat muna yun buo muna yun bago ka gagawa ng trial balance or FS. Pero with this workshop, tinuturo namin sa inyo yung mas mabilis na pamamaraan para makapag-come up tayo ng mas mabilis na trial balance. Kaya relax lang ang aming mga client. Alright, next, eto na, yung simpleng worksheet na ginagawa ng auditor, ituturo din namin sa inyo. And then, so, itong workshop ay pwede sa mga naka-loose leaf na manual books of accounts at saka yung mga manual books of accounts, yung physical lang talaga, yung nabibili sa store. Tinuturo namin kung paano mag-bookkeeping sa mga yon. And syempre, bibigyan ka namin ng solution keys or key answer para maikumpara mo naman ang iyong sagot sa aming sagot. Alright. So, ayan po. Hi, ma'am! Ay, paano naman po mag-enroll dyan sa inyong bookkeeping course, Bookkeeping Guide in Actual Practice? Alright, para makapag-enroll ka, pupunta ka dito sa aming site. Actually, ito yon, diba? So, i-click mo yan, yung seminars and workshop, dito ka mapupunta. Dito ka mapupunta sa page na to. So, mamili ka, ano ka ba? Ano yung identity mo? Ano ka? VAT Registered Seller of Services ka ba? I-click mo yon. Okay, so napunta ka na rito. Basa-basa ka muna ng mga matututunan mo, para kanino, ano yung mga gagawin, andyan. Tapos, ano yung laman ng course? Yan nga, yung lecture at saka yung workshop na materials. Tapos, yung discussion nasa video on demand. So, itong courses natin, ino-offer natin either face-to-face o kaya yung video on demand or VOD. Sa face-to-face, kasi nga pandemic ngayon, so wala mo ng face-to-face. Maliban nila kung merong gustong group yung group yung setting. Kunyari sa training room nila na pwedeng social distancing. Yan, pwede yun. So, sa 10 or more group participants, only lang to i-offer. Yung VOD setting naman, ideal ito doon sa mga study anytime, anywhere. So, basta meron kang internet connection, pwede ka mag-aral ng BKG, Bookkeeping Guide in Actual Practice. Yan lang, no, ako isa-suggest ko, computer ang gamitin mo, wag yung phone o kaya yung tablet. Kasi gagamit ka ng MS Excel. So, kung gagamit ka ng MS Excel, mahirap sa tablet or sa phone gumamit ng MS Excel. Meron kang freebie. Kasi minsan, di ba, yung gusto mo nang mag-bookkeeping, hindi mo pa naman alam ano ba yung mga basic terminologies, ano yung mga generally accepted accounting principles, yung mga ganyan. Kailangan matutunan mo muna yon, paano ba mag-debit at mag-credit. Kasi dito sa lecture ng BKG at saka workshop, hindi ituturo sa'yo yung konsepto ng debit at credit. Saan itinuturo yon? Dito sa AC 101 or yung Accounting 101. Yan. Regardless mo FTF or VOD, bibigyan ka po nun para aralin mo muna siya bago ka mag-proceed dito sa courses na ito. Tapos, bibigyan ka ng hard copies ng training materials. Kahit ikaw ay VOD, yung pinili mo, ipapadala ang iyong training materials kasama ng Certificate of Enrollment at ng iyong official receipt. Now, then, freebies, kung ano yung available na freebies during your enrollment. Alright. Now, paano ka mag-enroll? Sa FTF, ito, no? Normally, 3 days training yon, because it is a 3 days training and we are paying for the venue at saka yung mga ibang expenses dyan. Ang investment mo per enrollee ay 20,000. Ang investment fee ay depende sa kung anong course. No? Hindi pare-pareho yung investment fee ng mga yan. Ito lang sa sample natin. For the B42 ang FTF niya ay 20,000 net per enrollee. Ma'am, ang mahal. That's why we created the VOD. Para kung ano itinuturo dito, matutunan mo din. No? Ang investment fee mo dyan ay 6,000 net per enrollee. So, dito, meron kang 60 days access. Normally, since 3 days nga to, kung tutuloy-tuloyin mo ang pag-aaral, kaya mong aralin ng 3 days. Itong training na ito. Yan. Ang lang dito, kaya 60 days ang ibinigay namin sa'yo para ma-manage mo yung time mo. Kasi minsan, di ba, nagwo-work ka pa o kaya meron ka pang inaalagaan na anak o kaya nag-aaral ka. So, pwede mong hati-hatiin yung time mo. Basta within the 60 days access, i-avail mo yon. Kasi, madede-enroll ka after the 60 days. Now, after the 60 days, ma'am, hindi ko siya natapos. Ma'am, kaya ka naman binigyan ng 60 days para in consideration na mahina yung internet mo, nawalan ka ng internet. So, kung malakas ang internet mo, grab the chance. At saka ito, naka-design na tawag dito, na maaral mo siya ng at least mga 3 times. Kaya i-grab mo yung yung access period mo kasi sayang yung sayang yung course. Eto pa naman kapag master mo siya o natutunan mo siya, yung mga ibang staff namin nagre-resign na kasi kung ano yung template na binigay ko dito, yun din yung ginagamit namin sa sa mga clients namin. Ang nangyayari, na sila, nagre-register na sila ng mga bookkeeping services. Kaya yun na yung kanilang ginagamit na template. So, naman, tawag dito, ang purpose natin dito sa VOD para madalian ka sa bookkeeping at saka yun, matutunan mo yung naaayon sa tax code na pagbo-bookkeeping. Siyempre, pati yung yung bookkeeping, kasi sinasabi naman sumunod sa basic framework. Yung pagbo-bookkeeping natin dito, sumusunod tayo sa basic framework na binabanggit, no? Yan lang, dinadagdagan natin ng ano ba yung mga sinasabing provisions ng tax code. Yan siya. Tapos ito, no, i-fill up mo yan. I-click mo ito and to fill up the form yan. Mapupunta ka dyan. So, indicate mo yung iyong information, full name, nickname, email. Ay, yung email ha, i-double check ninyo kasi baka kulang ng M. gmail.co lang. Wala yung, hindi siya COM. Hindi ka mababatuhan ng nun. Hindi ka mababatuhan ng information. So, may tumatawag na lang sa amin, ma'am, nag-register po ako, pero walang notification. Parang walang email notification na nag-register siya. Kasi yung email na naipasok dito ay may mali or may kulang na letter doon sa kanyang email na nailagay. And then, yung contact number mo, yun. Tsaka ito, your company name, kung kung may company ka. Kasi minsan yung official receipt ipinapapangalan sa company. So, para dyan yun. Now, additional enrollees or remarks, doon sa mga practitioner or kaya bookkeeper, ilagay mo na practitioner or bookkeeper para eventually, kung meron kaming client na naghahanap ng malapit sa area mo, babatuhan ka namin ng client. Kasi minsan malayo o kaya hindi na, during the time na nag-inquire siya, hindi na namin ma-accommodate. Yung mga enrollee namin na practitioner or bookkeeper, ibinabato namin sa kanila yung client. Binabato. Hinahagis. Na binibigyan namin ng kung merong nag-inquire. Yun, kayo na yung bahala mag-usap tungkol sa inyong service fee or professional fee. Tapos then, are you human? Sagutin mo lang, then register now. So, ganun lang siya. Tapos, mayroon kang marireceive na email notification. From registration, paano ka magpo-proceed with the payment at saka kailan ka mabibigyan ng grant or access doon sa VOD course. Yung VOD course, nandito siya. Nandyan. Diyan ka namin i-enroll. Yan. So, yun din. No? Kapag nag-pay ka, mag-sign up ka dito sa Let's Learn Online para mabigyan ka ng access sa video-on-demand courses. Alright. Ang ating objective ay be tax literate, magkaroon ng tax literacy ang mga Filipino business owners dahil ang sinasabi na ating batas, Article 3 ng NCC New Civil Code, ignorance of the law excuses no one from compliance therewith. Kaya natin sinasabi yan kasi ma'am, sir, masigasig ang collection ng BIR. Kapag nakakita sila ng mga dapat i-kolekta sa'yo, gagamit sila ng batas na sinasabi nilang na-violate mo para makakollect sa'yo, no? So, yun ma'am. Tax literacy, be tax literate. Alright. Abangan po kita sa susunod na mga videos. And subscribe ka ma'am, sir ha, kung nakatulong ito sa'yo at gusto mo pa magkaroon ng karagdagang kaalaman para sa mga susunod kong videos, hit the notification bell. Thank you for watching. Bye!